Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me for this segment, we have Terry Angelos, CEO of DriveWealth, to discuss what's driving the fintech boom in Latin America and Africa. Terry, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Hey, Jill, great to be here.
Thank you so much. And before we get into local regions, let's have a more holistic overview. How have global personal finance and investing fintechs fared in 2022?
Yeah, sometimes I think it's helpful to just take a step back and look at some of the trends driving the industry. The last 5 years in fintech was really all about unbundling financial services. We saw buy now, pay later, payments, early wage access, and investing. And all of these became their own categories with discrete companies. I think today we're starting to see these services get rebundled into more fulsome offerings. And fintech companies, I think, are doing this for good reason. It's a lot easier and profitable if you can offer a consumer multiple services. And so now, most digital banks have a buy now, pay later, payments, early wage access, and increasingly investing as a single offering inside their sort of digital walls.
What role does DriveWealth play in helping to support the global fintech ecosystem?
Yeah, so first, DriveWealth is a B2B infrastructure business. We pioneered the idea of fractional investing, which means you don't have to go buy a whole share of Apple. You can just invest $1, and that is the way that you can affordably invest into the stock market. So, we are the infrastructure that over 100 of the largest consumer fintechs use to offer investment services to their millions of customers. So if you look at the sort of landscape today, there's over 1 billion people who access banking and financial services via digital wallets and neobanks. And for the first time, these consumers now have the tools and infrastructure through our platforms and others to buy, say, $1 of Apple stock. And if you look at, why there's such demand for that, if you just take a look at, stock market returns over the last, 5 years, the S&P has been one of the best performing asset classes, certainly vis-a-vis other international markets. And so for the first time, we're seeing consumers able to access this market affordably through some of the tools and infrastructure that we provide.
We've seen quite a bit of activity and growth in Africa and Latin America. Can you speak a bit about the growth trends in both of those regions?
Yeah, so similar to kind of what I mentioned earlier, this fintech boom has been about including new participants into the digital finance ecosystem that weren't there before. If you look at, for example, in LatAm, teen and young adults represent over half the entire population. Most of them have never used traditional banking services. And if you look at Africa, half the population in sub-Saharan Africa remains unbanked. So what fintech companies have done is they've gone after these greenfield opportunities, brought these consumers into this kind of digital revolution, in many cases leapfrogging traditional banking and investing. And so what we have today is tens of millions of consumers that have now access to a digital finance app, and for the first time can do banking, payments, and investing right from their phone.
Tell us about DriveWealth's recent Latin America and Africa partnerships and how you anticipate engaging with these regions in 2023.
Yeah, so both of those regions, I think, for us have been very interesting. If you think about a consumer in, say, Latin America, very familiar with, consumer US brands like Nike and Apple, but really haven't had an opportunity to actually invest in those companies. I'll give you one example. GBM, which is a partnership we announced last year, one of the leading investment platforms and brokerages in Mexico. Previously, US investing was really reserved for high net worth individuals in Mexico. There's only about 298,000 brokerage accounts in the whole country as of 2019. And then you have a company like GBM, who basically creates a digital investing platform and brings tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of new consumers into that ecosystem. And that's what we're seeing across LatAm. Similarly, if you look at in Africa, where you have consumers who are effectively locked out of investing, now we have companies like HISA, which is a company out of Kenya, which is providing education about U.S. securities markets to their consumers. And now through DriveWealth, you can actually purchase equities as well as just learn about them. So those are probably two good examples.
How does fintech activity in these regions play a part in addressing issues of access and inclusion in global financial markets?
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting question. So, if you were to give someone, say, in Nigeria or Peru or even Turkey, $500 that they weren't going to use for paying their rent, most of those consumers would very quickly want to invest that money, probably in the US dollar, maybe get out of their local economy. And the most productive form of the US dollar today certainly is the S&P 500. And so from a access and inclusion standpoint, by having these digital fintech companies who have KYC'd over 1 billion people, have access to a funding source, give those consumers the ability to very affordably convert their local hard-earned currency into the US dollar in the form of the S&P 500, we think will make an impact in financial inclusion around the world.
And finally, Terry, what fintech trends are you watching in 2023 and beyond?
Yes, as I mentioned, the first one is certainly this rebundling. I just think we've reached the point where consumer fintech companies have amassed large consumer bases, and now it's about providing those consumers with multiple services. Second, we expect to see more new investors who are adding investing as part of digital wallets. So, digital wallets today exceed about 4 billion people around the world have access to a digital wallet. And we think that over time, all of those customers will have access to some form of investing, whether it's local, or US investing. And so, with those sort of two big trends, the rebundling and the adding of investment services into those apps, we think it'll be a very exciting 2023 and beyond.
Okay, Terry, we appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.
Thanks, Jill.